Just checking in today to do a very quick week recap. It's been a kind of a crazy week, but I'll start with the Ashoka Suite by the Danish composer, trumpet player Palle Mikkelborg on the Metronome label. Let me show you the back. This was released in 1970, and Mikkelborg was later associated with Danish fusion bands Entrance and Alpha Centauri, and of course with many other projects, but this is one of his first albums to his name, and it features like a larger piece for a larger ensemble. It doesn't have where he conducts the work himself, so it doesn't actually play a lot on this. I guess the only track in which he plays is the first track on side B. Yeah, but this is very beautiful stuff, and I love this cover. Following that, the self-titled Mandala record, released in '76 on the Martison label. I can show you the back also. This is a sort of a one-off project with members that would be later associated with two different very influential groups in the Brazilian instrumental music landscape of the late '70s, which are Grupo and Grupo Pau Brasil. So this features Nelson Aires on piano, the great Zé Eduardo Nazário on drums and percussion, Zeca Assunção on bass, and Ricardo Sion on flute and saxophone. So as I mentioned, this was released in '76, but the sessions were actually recorded in '71. I guess you can say that it goes into a sort of a jazz fusion kind of territory. Also incorporate, even if very discreetly, some elements that would be later developed in Grupo, for instance, like an early adoption of electronics in quieter, more evocative or abstract passages. The album just grows into a sort of crescendo, until it reaches the point where you start to get more like heavy improvisation. And yeah, cool record. Following that, I have a record that I actually listened to last Friday just after Stunty's stream. He played side A of this. This is the latest, the Handover record on Sublime Frequencies. It's called New Old Medicine, and it's just a very addictive record. I guess it was like the fifth time that I've listened to this since it arrived here, like just a couple of weeks ago, and it's just incredible, mesmerizing, hypnotic, and very rich layering of sounds. You might be familiar also with their first LP, also on Sublime Frequencies, from 2024, I guess, just a couple of years ago. And yeah, the Handover, really, really impressive trio that mixes like traditional Egyptian music with a lot of different avant-garde and contemporary influences. Next, I have a couple of records by Rodrigo Campos, Brazilian songwriter from São Paulo. The first one is Bahia Fantástica, which was released in 2012. Here's the back. Rodrigo Campos, for those of you who might not be familiar, is a songwriter from São Paulo who is more associated with works that are based on like a samba, a more traditional urban Paulista samba sound, very melancholic, low-key type of samba that usually chronicles the day-to-day life of a big city, But with Bahia Fantástica, he took a very different direction. There is samba, of course, but there is a very fundamental geographic dislocation, change, So he goes to Bahia, he goes to Salvador, Bahia, a state in the northeast part of Brazil, very different landscape from São Paulo, and with a very vibrant music scene that is probably rooted in its African roots and heritage. So this is a record that of course it has samba, but it also has a ton of soul, a ton of Afrobeat influences. It goes in many different directions in such a cohesive way, Bahia Fantástica, It was reissued in 2022 to celebrate the a 10-year anniversary. So it might be relatively easy to get a reissue of this. The other Rodrigo Campos record that I picked, it is this one, which is actually a project uh, that also features the singer Jussara Marçal and Guiamabis on electronics. It is Sambas do Absurdo, Volume 1, Volume 1. It's 10-inch. So this was released in 2018 on the Goma Gringa label. And as the name might suggest, it is a work that involves a lot of samba, and the kind of samba that I just mentioned, the more low-key, more melancholic kind of samba. And I really like the music, I do think that the interplay between the Guiamabis electronics and the acoustic instrumentation, traditional like cavaquinho and bandolim and acoustic guitar, it works pretty well. Really interesting to sort of give a more modern, refreshed, urban sort of face to this samba sound, but it's not so much a work of more like a deep deconstruction of the genre. So yeah, Sambas do Absurdo.
Nenhuma cana, nem sabe ler. Saiu da cana, o que ele vê? O nosso algoz dentro de nós. Não tem polícia na minha voz.
And last, I have this Edu Lobo record, self-titled record on the Odeon label, released in '73. I guess you might see this being mentioned around the internet or whatever with the title Missa Breve. But and I guess there was a CD reissue where it was titled Missa Breve, and maybe a couple of other reissues where the insert, not the cover, but the insert included this name. But yeah, this is actually a self-titled record. The Missa Breve sort of name would be a sort of description to the side B of this, which is kind of a long suite of pieces that are an Edu Lobo's take on like sacred liturgic music. I think this is a very unique record in his discography. I'm not I'm not the big like Edu Lobo connoisseur, but this is, I guess, the closest to the Minas Gerais sound that he ever got, And that this is not a coincidence or anything, because you have Novelli playing here, you have Milton Nascimento appearance here, but it's interesting to see what he accomplishes here in comparison with his previous records that are more situated within a bossa nova vocabulary and aesthetics, with the exception of the works that he did for theater, for plays. And this is a record that also has a ton more punch if compared to his more like bossa nova identity. I don't see Edu Lobo being mentioned a lot on the Missy, But I think this would be a good place to start with him, especially if you are already into the sort of Minas Gerais sound, if you're into Milton Nascimento, if you're into Clube da Esquina, whatever. This might be an interesting record for you to check out, like how a composer from a different place and with a different sort of personal history, personal career, uh, kind of touched on that sonic world also. It's a really, really cool record.
Daqui pra lá não vai dizer que a Bahia não é show, que a Bahia não é show, que a Bahia não é show. Fiz 5 doces pra lhe ver e alguém um dia me falou: tenho Bahia pra você, tenho Bahia pra